Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent experiences in business.
Learn what their cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
Welcome, John Patsch. We welcome you to our show. Good to have you here. You are the co-founder of Mingle, which is a company that empowers organizations to cultivate strong, vibrant cultures, and that's right up our alley.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
Yeah, you're looking mighty good. If people could see you, and they will if they go to the YouTube channels, they can see all of our recordings as they happen live. But if you're listening, then sit back and relax, because I think this is going to be a non-bumpy ride, but it'll be a nice one.
Nice. Hey, John, we
Oh wait, oops. hold on. That was. Yep, we keep going.
What's your question?
Oh, you want me to ask my question first? Yeah,
I'm jumping the gun here.
It's okay. It's quite all right. You think we haven't never done this before, and this is probably
episode 2,
episode 20. Yeah. But here we go. So, John, one of the things we like to do is do a little connections before content. So we want people to know a little bit about who you are as an individual. So one of the questions we have for you is, tell us something about you that people would not be able to read on your resume.
Oh boy, there's so much to tell there. No, not at all. Actually, my resume is business focused, but what people don't see of me is I am a serial DIYer, and when I say serial DIYer, that's everything. And there's 2 reasons for that. It certainly isn't because I have to. It's more because I want to learn about the process of how things work. And I'm very interested in working with my hands, always have been. But on the other hand, when you're able to roll up your sleeves and do the work yourself, you understand how difficult it is sometimes for other people to do that very same task.
So I have the question then is, what percentage of your DIY projects do you actually finish?
You know what? I would say that that's about 95%. There are some things that I've gotten into that, it's just one of those, you don't know what you don't know until you're there. And the next thing you know, it's beyond your scope of knowledge, and very difficult from a technique perspective to gather that technique in a short amount of time. So obviously you call in some professionals for those situations.
Well, I was beginning to think we were going to have to hit the pause button when he first started out, because he repeated the word cereal twice before he answered what cereal something was. And so good to know that it was a serial DIYer, not something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing else. That's accurate. Nothing else. DIYer.
What would be some characteristics or attributes that you would claim for yourself that would tell people who you are as a person, not just the role you play? Because we already know that you're a co-founder of this company. You have a lot of responsibilities in that area, but let's distinguish not that role, but who you are as a person. What would be some attributes or some values that you hold dear?
I think the biggest thing I hold dear is honesty. And when I talk about honesty, that word is thrown around quite a bit. But whether it's good or it's bad, I seek the honest truth, so to speak, and I care. And I want to help type of guy. And, if somebody is struggling out there, I want to be the one who says, well, wait a minute, let's understand the situation. Let's get down to the brass tacks. Was this caused by an outside entity or situation, or was this something that you personally have done or that you have fallen short on? and be able to, I guess, assist in overcoming the barriers for other people. And I care about that honesty.
Great. Thanks.
I love it. And how do you exhibit that in your daily life?
Yeah. What's the observable behaviors?
I think the observable behavior there for me, if I'm doing a self-analysis, is that I'm a good listener, and when I'm listening, I'm listening and thinking through, situations at the same time, if you will. And how I apply that in a caring way is to ask good questions, to listen more.
Yeah, good open-ended questions.
Yeah.
But we talk about that for active listening, so it's not only making eye contact when you can, but it's tuning yourself into what the person is saying and listening intently, asking those open-ended, non-leading questions that allow for it's not only self-discovery, but just the expansion of the knowledge and information, acknowledging the individual, maybe doing a little recap and debrief along the way, those types of things. That's really all very, very helpful. So John, thanks for sharing that, because I think it gives listeners an opportunity to understand that even someone as accomplished as you are in your position and what you do, there's still a fundamental of leadership that you have to exhibit and do on a daily basis. And if not, it just gets all messed up.
Absolutely. And if you let it run, sometimes it gets so far down a path that it's hard to recover from.
Yeah.
So we've learned I as your identity. So let's talk about a little bit about your R roles. Let's talk about Mingle, but also what led you to getting to Mingle.
As a person, as a business person, I've always been very entrepreneurial in my efforts. Everything for the last 20 years, I've had a consulting company. This is my fourth startup. So I'm interested in providing to the audience, my audience specifically, a product or service that is going to assist them. I've always had the philosophy that in business, you have to, well, here's one quote I think I coined. Don't buy technology for technology purposes. Buy technology when it helps you get to the bottom line. And the reasoning behind that quote is to say that, listen, you've got to understand where you're at and what got you there and where you want to go and how to get there. And that's where you apply a service or a technology such as a software like Mingle. It's really in the application of that. And you determine the success of that by buying into what the goal is in that implementation.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So for you, what was one thing that led you to say, we need to do another startup and we need to do this Mingle company? And by the way, for the listeners, when we talk about Mingle, it really is what it is. It's people getting together and, sharing information and ideas. But the company is Miingl. So just in case you want to Google it and look it up while we're talking and you're listening, then that's how you would look it up. Miingl. So now back to my question to you, John, and that is, what was it about that company that really led you to do it?
You know what? We are at a point in our society where their attention spans have shrunk, the communications have shrunk, the connections have shrunk, and we wanted to build something that really, was a live environment that was interactive and that built true connection. And, for me, it was a little bit different in my passion for Mingle than it was for the other co-founders. Each of them also have their own story, but our stories really revolve around the idea that we want authentic connection. And we weren't getting that in the content consumption that so many people are involved in on a day-to-day basis. With their phones having access to different platforms and, reading content and in short clips. What we were trying to accomplish when we started Mingle is to bring back the opportunity to converse and create that authentic connection and learn about each other and do that in a community style that is better received, in my opinion, to enhance cohesion and collaboration.
Yeah, great. And we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But first, Ben's going to kick us off with the first question here of their meeting of uh-oh.
So, what was an uh-oh experience that our listeners could learn from what you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my biggest uh-oh experience, as I think about startups, we were in a startup about 12 years ago, and there were 4 of us co-founders of this startup. And 2 of the individuals, one being me, the other, we had a difference of opinion in who should be the ultimate decision maker. And, I guess the discourse that we were experiencing from a leadership perspective was being highlighted unbeknownst to us. And that is that our communication became very confrontational, very argumentative, very power grabbish. I don't know if that's a word, but we'll call it one.
It is now.
So anyway, we went down this road and we really started butting heads. And, what I found that was at least disconcerting to me is that we lost sight of the vision and why we were there and what we were trying to accomplish, and started going down the road of, okay, who's leading this ship? Who's driving the ship? Instead of making decisions based upon good communication. And the uh-oh is that we both failed. And it was the beginning of the end of that company. And it went downhill from there from a relationship perspective, but also from a business perspective. We ended up selling the company and going our separate ways. I haven't talked to him since, and he hasn't talked to me since. And we haven't even reached out. I don't know that we'd say hello to each other walking down the hall. But on the other hand, what I did learn and the value of going through that experience for me and why it was an uh-oh moment is I had a lot to do with the outcome and the end outcome of that I could have changed. And if I were better at communicating and less focused on being right, and more focused on the business being right, I think we would have gone a different way.
I really appreciate your transparency. I think that's so important when you're recounting a situation like this and letting people know about it, to really be transparent. And, sharing an uh-oh moment really requires you to be vulnerable. Yeah. You have to be willing to say, I messed this up. And I don't think people are looking for other people to be perfect. They're looking for them to be transparent, to be honest, as John mentioned in the very beginning, which is tell the truth,
right.
No half lies, no omissions, be forthcoming in your information.
But it's about being honest with yourself too. And that's a big part of it. It's like you can say things and be honest with others, but sometimes people can see through the idea of if you're not honest with yourself. And I've actually recently learned that there's actually a huge difference between being transparent and being vulnerable. Some folks can be transparent, but remove themselves from the emotions of describing something. The vulnerability element is that you actually allow yourselves to feel the emotions of those challenges, those traumas, those bad decisions. And that's a big takeaway to realize, okay, well, I can just say what I remembered or how it went. But when you actually are able to remember those emotions with it, you're then able to help the next person.
So it takes that transparency to an upper level to
actually be vulnerable, right?
Yeah, to be vulnerable. Okay, that's great insight, Ben. Super duper. So one of the follow-up questions we have for you is, what does this cost you? I kind of heard a little bit Sounded like relationship was one of the items that I kind of got from it. But
it's interesting that you put it in that perspective of cost. And I look at it a little bit differently. While it did cost me the business, and I think probably some opportunity unrealized, I look at it more that what did I gain out of that moment? What did I take as a learning opportunity to go forward and say, listen, you can do this better. You've realized that you could have done it better then, and you can't take that back. But what can you learn from that failure and that right? And how can you apply that over, the next situations and your next leadership opportunities and your next interactions with other people and other leaders, and how do you do that not only in business but in life?
Good. So let's reframe this and then say, so what did you gain from this? How have you applied it now? And what are you getting out of life?
Thank you. And with the reframing, I will share that I took a much stronger stance on how communication works. And I studied and I learned, and I'm cognizant of with every conversation I have. I learn more about people now than I did then. And to be honest, that brings the authenticity to the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you applied that, I'm assuming that those lessons about communication. So just really creating structure around communication, boundaries, so to speak, of the way it is, and making sure that there is an opportunity for people to have a chance to speak a disagreement, right? You don't expect everyone to agree completely, but there should be a decorum or a way in which you can process when you're not feeling that you're being heard, or if you feel that you have something to share that you need to get out.
I heard this morning, actually, something that's revolutionary in my mind. When you're having a conversation and it's, let's say it's conflict driven or whatever's going on, the next conversation often is calmer, peaceful. There's some apologies and things like that. How would your communication style be different if you think of this conversation in context of the next conversation? How would you change what's being said now to avoid that future apology, that future disgruntled one, that future thing? So how, Fanny has a great conversation on doing what's right is never wrong, or what's the saying? No, to further what's right.
Yeah, you sometimes, it's like, are you willing to be wrong to further what is right?
So the idea is, like, in a conversation, winning to win, or to be right versus, okay, that I understand that, or, asking more questions. But the framing that I took from the thing I heard today was, okay, the next conversation after this one's going to suck. Why not change how this one's actually going to end?
Yeah, that's a good perspective. And, I think that's where I failed in my moment was not deferring to what's right in order to better, I forget the exact quote there, but where I look at listening, it's a learned capability. It's not just inherent. Some people probably have it inherently, but I didn't at all. And I had to learn how to listen. And there's so many steps to listening to conversations and responding to whatever that conversation brings, that even though you disagree, it doesn't have to be heated. You don't have to put your flag in the ground and then, defend your line, so to speak. You have the opportunity to listen and decide dynamically whether or not they're changing your mind in a argumentative situation, right? And I don't want to say argumentative as heated, but discourse or disagreement or whatever the case is. If you're listening actively, you're better able to manage how you respond to that based upon what you truly believe.
Yes. And the one thing that that we find is when individuals, and specifically leaders who have authority, when they are entering into conversations, leadership, doing business, whatever it happens to be, and they place their view on a pedestal, when they place their view above what could be that could be learned or could be altered by insight and information from others, they are having what we refer to as an ethnocentric line of thinking. And it's also really driven sometimes by their culture, by their value systems within the culture, how they interact within the culture. So this is playing into the piece. And we talk about 7 attributes of an effective leader through our Cohesion program, and teachability is the first one. It's, are you teachable? Are you willing to listen to what somebody else has to say? Are you so full of yourself that you can't hear anything else that anybody else is saying? And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with what everybody else is saying. That's not it. Nor do you have to follow what everybody is saying. But it's, are you truly in the mindset that says, I will listen? And if there is that percentage of chance for change, will you be willing to alter that chance of change for the better? That's kind of really where we are.
Yeah. That's a hard one. Yeah.
I happen to agree with that line of thinking, by the way. As you look at listening, active listening, it's the thirst for knowledge that drives the ability to listen better, to truly understand and become knowledgeable of how that other individual is feeling, thinking, and portraying their thoughts. Maybe it be inappropriate, maybe it be appropriate, whatever the case is. If you're listening actively, you're seeking the knowledge to help the situation go down the path that you would want it to go down. Excuse me.
Yeah, great. So John, you've given us a lot of insight to this, to your experience, which had to do around communication. And we've kind of reframed the cost to what you would gain, as a result of doing it. So a lot of it requires some discipline on your part to be able to do. So for our listeners who are thinking like, gosh, I've got to really get my communication under control. And it's not just your communication, but it's the other person's communication. So there's a little bit of emotional intelligence that's going to be involved in this, because if you have emotionally charged conversations, like I think the ones that you may have had with this individual, especially if you got to a point where you're not even sure you're going to say hi to him when you walk down the hallway, then then really understanding that part of the responsibility of you is to not only be self-aware of your emotions, but to have self-regard in how you control your emotion so that others don't necessarily explode as a result of it. So, some good things that I have learned in the past is that if you have a conversation that's going to be emotionally charged, wait some time before you have it. You don't want to enter into a dynamic conversation with a lot of overcharged energy, especially if it's more negative, because it's not going to produce a positive result if you go into it with it being negative. So really appreciate you sharing all of that with us. We do want to ask you, what type of additional leadership advice would you give to someone? So let's say someone is looking for a job within your company, or they're already as an employee within your company, and they're looking to grow, develop, and advance. What would you tell them that you were looking for, or what would you tell them to do?
So, that's a great question. And I've had the opportunity to kind of share my thoughts with quite a few folks over the years. And really what I look for in an individual, no matter what level I'm hiring for, whether that's operations management or even executive level, I'm looking for people who have better ideas than I do and aren't afraid to share them. That doesn't mean that those ideas are going to be chosen or implemented. What it means is that we want the creativity to be at the forefront of an individual, more so than a resume. I may look at somebody who has a penchant for leadership differently than I do for somebody who has all the knowledge behind them of all the different roles within a company. The leadership person who has the penchant for it is going to be looked at, from my perspective, differently than somebody who's just got the resume for it.
Yeah, it's the application, right, of how they're actually applying that information. And
That's
then
exactly.
the art is figuring out, how do I communicate that to you in a way that makes me a viable candidate for that growth, development, and advancement.
Right. Skills-based hiring instead of just knowledge or degrees or whatnot. But yeah, that's are there ways where you can try to test that kind of application? I'll caveat that when I did an engineering co-op, they literally put a challenge of different items in front of me and said, create the most stable structure, go. And like literally the major part of how you got hired was what you did with that solution, that problem right in front of you.
Yeah, I think Google deploys that very same process where they challenge you with a known physical test, so to speak, whether that be mathematics or, in your case, engineering. For me, much different in the sense that I tend to ask about personal life, how it bleeds into the business life, how they share those relationships. And most importantly, I ask them about the problems they've had in the past and how they've overcome them and what they've done creatively to better themselves in a way that can be applied to not only life, but business.
Yeah. Well, John, we appreciate you being with us today. Couple things before we close out. One is just really want to talk a little bit more about this, like the concept of mingling and why mingling is important, especially as you really, I think the essence of what you talked about today was about communication and people connecting and doing that. And Mingle certainly does that through the cohesive leader community. We offer Mingle times where individuals once a week can go into a suite. They can sign in on Tuesdays from 6:16 to 7:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, that's an hour and 1 minute of Mingle. And there's a lot of really fun activities that happen within that space, and really appreciate you giving us that opportunity, because we see that one of the fundamental aspects of infusing cohesion into not only the culture of the work, but to you, the individual, is having that sense of belonging and inclusion. And having a community is one of the best ways for you to feel like you belong. And when you participate in that community, now you're engaged. And so that's what we're really hoping for, is that people will now start to go into those Mingle spaces, will actually start to interact with us as the momentum continues. So we appreciate you.
I don't know if you guys thought about this, but that's Cohesion Culture 101.
It is. I mean, it's one of the reasons. It's why we managed to work it out so well, is that what we saw is that you were providing a technology solution. And for me, I have a big message that I've been speaking on for the past year, and that is how can technology humanize culture? And what that means is we're not asking for the AI intelligence or the technology to replace the human or to exhibit human behavior in a way that makes the technology seem like it's real, but it's how do you use the technology to interact so that you can create more of that connection time to be human when you have that time to be with the person. So we're not suggesting that the technology should replace the human. It's how does the technology supplement what it means to be human to do that? And we really saw that coming forward in your business and company, and that's one of the reasons we thought it was important to really set it up that way and have our Mingle space. So
absolutely. And we appreciate you being on Mingle. And I can share with you that we are trying to make Mingle as close to real life as possible. And, so there's some nuances with all video platforms. And what we found is very few of them are audience first. And we are audience first. And when we say that, we certainly expect that hosts like yourselves will be part of the audience as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things we like to know from you is, what question did you think we were going to ask today that we didn't?
Oh boy. You know, I guess the only one is you did such a great job. You didn't have to ask the question. What's your Mingle story, right? And I think I shared a little bit, but you told the story so perfectly. You didn't even have to ask the question.
Well, okay, I appreciate you saying that. And one of the reasons we add that question is we want to help individuals who are going to potentially interview for a advancement or promotion opportunity, and that's what they should be prepared for. They should be prepared for the interviewer to say, what question did you think we were going to ask today that we didn't? So you should have that top of mind so that you're able to prepare. So I put you on the spot because we're having fun with you. We're not interviewing for a job. But for our listeners who are in that mode of trying to find that growth, that development, that advancement, whatever that happens to be, it's always good to have some things in their back pocket.
You know what I ask people when it's off the cuff like that, and I don't mean it as a stumper, I'm truly interested in learning, is what motivates them? What is it that motivates them?
Yes. And we just have a little twist to that. And we ask, well, what makes you feel included at work?
Sure.
Because what makes you feel included at work, or tell me, how does this work that you do become meaningful to you? Those are getting the motivators that come along with it. So it's a great question. It aligns either way. But the good news is to know what to do with the information once you get it. So once you understand motivation, then you can say, oh, this is how you like to be included. Oh, this is how you also think of your work as being meaningful. So good.
Absolutely.
Good stuff today, John. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Conversations with Cohesive Leaders.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we like to close out all of our Cohesion Culture sessions with a mantra, a reminder to our listeners, and that is, you don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.